Imagine you're playing a video game. You're just wandering around and suddenly you walk right through a solid wall, glitching entirely out of the map into this empty, weird void. The Backrooms is basically a story about that exact thing happening, but in real life. It all started back in 2019 with just one weird, lonely picture floating around online of an empty yellow office building. And then someone dropped this deeply terrifying reply claiming the picture was a real, incredibly lonely place outside of our world. Slipping into this reality is kind of like pulling a single loose thread that completely unravels a sweater. Just one wrong, accidental step and you slip away, glitching out of our reality forever.
If you do fall through, you drop right into what's known as level 0, which is just this completely endless maze of identical yellow rooms where you absolutely cannot find a door out. It is sensory grossness at its absolute peak. The carpets are perpetually damp and smell exactly like old, dirty water. The walls are plastered in this totally hideous yellow wallpaper, and there is zero furniture anywhere. And the ceiling lights, man, they just buzz, constantly, aggressively humming like a swarm of angry bees, which slowly drives anyone trapped there totally crazy. But the scariest part of the whole thing is just being completely alone. You could walk for millions of miles in that endless empty space without ever seeing another soul.
The whole thing plays heavily on this idea of a liminal space. Think of a liminal space as a transition area, like a waiting room or a long, empty hallway that you're just meant to pass through. Our brains inherently expect people to be in these places, so when there's no one around, the vibe is just profoundly creepy and unnatural. And in the Backrooms, that creepy feeling lasts forever. People got so hooked on this bizarre vibe that they started inventing thousands of new areas, with every single one packed with wildly different rules and completely fresh dangers. If you manage to wander around those yellow rooms and find the right dark hallway, you step into level 1. It's this giant concrete warehouse, completely choked with strange fog and flickering lights. People actually survive down there, oddly enough, by finding these random boxes of water and supplies, forming small, scrappy little camps together. But if you keep going, you hit a place playfully dubbed Pipe Dreams. It is brutal. It's an endless series of hot, narrow brick tunnels covered in huge metal pipes that make it incredibly hard to breathe. The pipes clank loudly all the time, leaking this thick black fluid, and honestly, you just gotta keep moving forward, or you will so easily get swallowed by the dark. And you aren't always alone down there either. Fans dreamed up these absolutely terrifying monsters called entities. And yeah, they are just chilling in the dark, waiting to ruin your day. The most famous one is the Smiler. It hides in pitch black darkness, and the only thing you can ever spot are its glowing white eyes, these massive teeth, and a truly horrifying grin. So, if you ever spot that awful grin in the dark, here is your survival advice. Never ever run from a Smiler. You just have to walk backward, super slowly, and definitely turn off your flashlight to hide. And if you make it past them, you might run into the Hound. These things crawl super fast on their hands and knees, looking almost human, but they have this wild hair and razor-sharp teeth. The rules for dealing with a hound are pretty simple but incredibly stressful. They get super aggressive if you stare at them, so you gotta look away slowly and keep completely, absolutely quiet so they don't hear you and come running. It's not entirely a nightmare though, because there are actually good guys in the story. They're called the Major Explorer Group, or the MEG for short, and they swoop in to help lost people survive. They act like this brave underground rescue squad, which is wild considering where they are. They're constantly exploring new areas, writing down all the rules, pointing out where the monsters are hiding, and mapping out the safe zones for everyone else. People built these massive encyclopedia-like websites to track all this insane lore, letting absolutely anyone jump in and write a new page. This massive shared storytelling is basically like 1,000 blindfolded people magically building a giant Lego castle together, which really just proves the internet completely owns the whole concept. Of course, internet rules being what they are, things clash sometimes. You've got purists who insist that the original empty yellow room and pure isolation is way scarier than any monster. Then you have other fans who love treating the thousands of levels like a giant sprawling role-playing game. Honestly, both ways are pretty fun. But then, a teenager completely revolutionized the story with an incredibly real-looking, spooky VHS-style video. Millions of people watched it online, and so many actually believed the scary, convincing footage was real, making the whole thing globally famous overnight. And that brought in arguably the coolest addition, a massive science company called Async. They're trying to intentionally open a door to this glitch space just so they can use the infinite rooms for storage. Just picture these scientists in big yellow hazmat suits, tied to long ropes, setting up cameras and measuring the rooms to try and control all this chaos. It's kind of hilarious because of their sheer hubris. The space is just way too big, it constantly shifts entirely on its own, and it easily defeats their science, leaving them totally lost. When you really let it sink in, this whole thing taps into a very specific fear that is completely unlike our old, expected dread of ghosts in haunted castles or vampires in the woods. It takes modern, intensely boring places, like a mundane office building, and just twists them into a deeply hostile nightmare. It's a lot like that exact sudden panic a child feels when they get lost in a massive mall, and they just don't know where their parents are. The familiar yellow wallpaper and the old carpets actually make the trap feel way worse, because it's hiding a nightmare right there in plain sight. And if you're wandering around those familiar carpets, there's this weird water theme you'll definitely notice. Specifically, you can find almond water in these rusty metal cans, and it tastes slightly sweet and very strange. Drinking it is literally the most valuable thing you can do down there, because it somehow stops the buzzing lights from melting your brain and keeps you entirely sane. If you keep wandering, you might eventually find yourself in a space called the pool rooms. It is this endless maze of indoor swimming pools radiating a really soft, eerie blue glow. The vibe here is totally quiet and peaceful. There's just the gentle sound of water echoing off white tiles, making it feel super calm, but leaving you with this profoundly, deeply lonely feeling. Or you could end up in the Fake Town, which is an eerily bright little neighborhood made for dolls, sitting under a permanently painted fake sunset. It feels exactly like wandering through an empty, silent child's TV show, complete with huge floating castles up in the sky. It leaves anyone who visits totally, utterly confused. And a quick warning, the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. Eventually, the space starts breaking the laws of gravity, so you can just casually walk right up the walls, and time completely stops making any sense. The physics are totally broken. You might walk in a perfectly straight line, but end up going in circles for a week. Or you could just drop your watch and casually watch it float away into the air. Totally normal. Finding an exit out of all this weirdness is absolutely the biggest debate. Some people swear a true exit definitely exists if you can just find and climb the right set of stairs. But that's heavily contrasted by the grim fans who say you are stuck forever in infinite rooms, and any tiny sliver of hope is just a cruel trick. People try to make maps, sure, but the building actively tries to confuse you by constantly shifting its hallways, turning the door you used yesterday into a solid brick wall today. The sheer terror comes from the fact that there is no central bad guy to defeat. Fighting an endless yellow hallway is exactly like trying to punch the ocean, because there's no villain. You are literally just fighting the building itself. Thankfully, video games use this setting all the time now, letting players jump in to explore the yellow rooms, solve weird puzzles, and hide from all those terrifying sounds. Games let you safely act as the lost explorer, letting you experience the loud buzzing lights and that sheer glitching panic right from the total comfort of your own chair. It's just full of wonder how a single goofy joke picture evolves into this giant, sprawling library of stories. It really proves how creatively we can build huge, complex worlds out of absolute nothing. We build these terrifying spaces just to test our bravery and imagine surviving the absolute worst, which honestly just makes our safe, cozy homes feel that much warmer. It's a modern fairy tale where a simple glitch replaces the dark woods, warning us about getting lost in today's massive modern world. From now on, every single time you see an empty office or a blank wall, you're going to worry about stepping in the wrong spot. After all, are you absolutely sure reality is completely solid right beneath your feet? Like, share, and subscribe right now.